The Premature Burial. The Premature Burial is a horror short story by American writer Edgar Allan Poe. Published in 1844 in the Philadelphia Dollar newspaper. Its main character expresses concern about being buried alive. This fear was common in this period, and Poe was taking advantage of the public interest. The story has been adapted to a film. Plot summary. In The Premature Burial, the first-person unnamed narrator describes his struggle with things such as attacks of the singular disorder which physicians have agreed to term catalepsy, a condition where he randomly falls into a death-like trance. This leads to his fear of being buried alive. The true wretchedness, he says, is to be buried while alive. He emphasizes his fear by mentioning several people who have been buried alive. In the first case, the tragic accident was only discovered much later, when the victim's crypt was reopened. In others, victims revived and were able to draw attention to themselves in time to be freed from their ghastly prisons. The narrator reviews these examples in order to provide context for his nearly crippling phobia of being buried alive. As he explains, his condition made him prone to slipping into a trance state of unconsciousness, a disease that grew progressively worse over time. He became obsessed with the idea that he would fall into such a state while away from home, and that his state would be mistaken for death. He extracts promises from his friends that they will not bury him prematurely, refuses to leave his home, and builds an elaborate tomb with equipment allowing him to signal for help in case he should awaken after death. The story culminates when the narrator awakens in pitch darkness in a confined area. He presumes he has been buried alive, and all his precautions were to no avail. He cries out and is immediately hushed. He quickly realizes that he is in the berth of a small boat, not a grave. The event shocks him out of his obsession with death, and soon after, his catalepsy episodes cease entirely, leading him to suspect that they were a symptom of his phobia, rather than a cause. Analysis. Fear of burial alive was deeply rooted in Western culture in the 19th century. And Poe was taking advantage of the public's fascination with it. Hundreds of cases were reported in which doctors mistakenly pronounced people dead. In this period, coffins occasionally were equipped with emergency devices to allow the corpse to call for help, should he or she turn out to be still living. It was such a strong concern, Victorians even organized a society for the prevention of people being buried alive. Believe in the vampire. An animated corpse that remains in its grave by day and emerges to prey on the living at night, has sometimes been attributed to premature burial. Folklorist Paul Barber has argued that the incidence of burial alive has been overestimated, and that the normal effects of decomposition are mistaken for signs of life. The story emphasizes this fascination by having the narrator state that truth can be more terrifying than fiction, then reciting actual cases in order to convince the reader to believe the main story. The narrator in The Premature Burial is living a hollow life. He has avoided reality through his catalepsy but also through his fantasies, visions, and obsession with death. He does, however, reform, but only after his greatest fear has been realized. End of the summary. Thank you.